Welcome back to Jeremy Vine Extra. Benjamin and Mike are still here with us, and now we want your calls on whether it's young people's duty to protest over the climate crisis. 0207 862 2222 is the number. Get your calls in now. Just Stop Oil protesters have been disrupting petrol stations in Surrey and Kent this morning, and they say protesting is the most important thing that they can do right now. Almost all of them are under the age of 24, and they say it is their duty to act. Mike, how do you feel about that word duty?
Well, I think it's absurd, and these people are absurd. We're looking at pictures now of damaged property. If somebody came to your house, Storm, and started smashing your windows or knocking nails into your bricks or something like that, you'd call the police would arrest them. It's criminal damage, OK? But they think they can go around criminally damaging other people's property, even if it is only Shell or BP, which are very wealthy oil companies, but it's other people's property. Now, the other thing which is absolutely absurd about this, and you're a younger man than me, Benjamin, is I estimate within my life I've probably paid between £2 and £3 million in tax. Therefore, I have a right to have a contribution to how the world runs. These people don't. These people have never paid a penny in tax.
Oh, you don't know that, Mike.
They were described in the report that I've been given this morning, a student from Sussex University. That doesn't
mean that they haven't worked.
What it means is they've contributed very, very little to the development of this country. I've created tons and tons of things in the development of this country.
So you're only allowed an opinion the more money you make for the tax for the government?
No, but I won't stand aside and let lawlessness go on like that when it's perpetrated by people who actually are doing it for their own selfish motives. By the way, earlier this week, two protesters, XR protesters, right, who caused £1.2 million worth of losses to the newspaper industry for those protests outside the print plants, were given 2-year conditional discharges for causing £1.2 million worth of damage. Until the judiciary get hard with these people, they'll go around vandalising petrol stations, they'll go around sitting on roads and gluing themselves to vans, because we've got to get hard with them, because their tiny number of people are disrupting millions of people's lives.
What do you think, Benjamin?
Well, I mean, first of all, drinks are on Mike. If you've paid £3 million in tax, you must...
Well, I haven't got it anymore because the taxman has.
I'd love the opportunity to make that much. And actually, you made an unexpectedly valid point at the end, which is that a tiny number of people are having a huge effect on the rest of us. And that's possibly people like you, people that fly around the world all the time, that drive massive 4x4s, that are causing huge amounts of pollution. And duty is exactly the right word, because, you know, we started this programme by talking about the
refugee... I know nothing about life.
We started this programme by talking about the refugee crisis.
Yeah.
In 2019, the last year for full figures that we have, 6.7 million people were displaced from their homes because of natural disasters. Half the US states last year had emergencies because of natural disasters. 30 billion
Sorry, what's that got to do
ice.
with people smashing up a petrol station on the M25?
Because the question is
Clackett's Lane, actually. I get my petrol there, so if I can't get my petrol there tonight...
You won't be today.
I'm going to be in a really bad mood, yeah.
But the question is it their duty? Well, when you have a situation where so many millions of people are having their lives ruined, completely ruined, thousands of people are dying, 10,000 people died in a heat wave in Moscow. Yeah. When that is a situation...
Weather.
No, but it's not called weather. It's called climate change. Well, if you don't know the difference between weather and climate, we're not going to get very far. And the truth is that is ruining people's lives far worse than not being able to get a bit of petrol on the way home.
It's sounding a little bit there like, Mike, you're denying that there is a climate crisis.
Of course I'm not. I'm not a climate change denier. The climate is changing, but it's due to an awful lot of reasons, not just the fact, including China building a new coal-fired power station every month. I'd like to see them go to China and smash up a petrol station in China, which is causing much more damage to the environment than we ever do.
Okay,
Why don't they do that?
Do nothing.
Why don't they do that?
You would do nothing. What do you do?
Look,
what do you do?
Those students should go back to university and apply themselves to their studies and try and contribute in a scientific way to helping climate change.
Mike, that I think you're going to find very interesting. Yeah. We're going to speak now to Just Stop Oil protester Miranda Whelehan. Thank you very much for joining us, Miranda. What do you think to one of Mike's earlier comments saying that you haven't contributed enough to the government's coffers, so you don't really have a say?
I would just like to say I personally know a lot of the people who have taken this protest, and I know that they work. Most of them have jobs. They do this because they're so scared and desperate, and they work because they need to pay their bills and they need to pay to have rent. I don't really know how you think these people just exist. We live in a society where we have to pay for things. And I think the fact that you have said that when what they are doing is try to protect the future is absolutely outrageous, to be honest.
And what about the argument as well that Mike made that actually most of these protesters are under the age of 24? You don't have enough life experience to understand what you're doing.
I don't think you need life experience to know that adding more oil, burning more oil and adding all that carbon to the atmosphere is going to lead to climate breakdown. I don't think you need, there's climate people talking about who are children. They can understand the science very clearly. And actually the fact you are much older than us, Mike, and you don't understand this is just astonishing. We need to stop new oil investments now. That is just so simple. If you see what's happening in India right now, you know what's happening in India. It's 46 degrees and this is just the start of the summer. Can you genuinely imagine what that is like?
India's a very hot country. Could I just say, please, in response to that, Greta Thunberg once went to America from Europe on a boat because she said, I'm not going to burn any fossil fuels and all that. It took her 3 weeks to get there. If we suddenly halt the economy and don't burn any more fossil fuels and don't use oil, we will go back to a middle-age style existence, and that will kill millions of people. It'll kill millions of people because if a country starts going backwards like that, the economy will collapse and we'll all be in terrible trouble.
That's why we're talking about no new oil. We know you can't just turn off the taps right now. We're just saying don't build any new oil. We don't need to have these new oil fields. We've got 8 more years of oil with the oil fields we have.
It's completely
We've seen it in other countries. We've seen it here. We can transition to renewable energy. We can transition to energy efficiency. And not even we can, we have to. We have to do this right now. And the fact that we're even having this debate, it's just absolutely... it's just horrendous that we're still having this debate right now. We have to stop new oil. There are people dying around the world in countries right now. Look at what is happening in India. And if you don't care, then I'm sorry, but where is your humanity?
Miranda, thank you very much. I can hear your passion coming through the screen. You're not in the studio, but I can feel it's palpable. Can you stay with us while we take a couple of calls? Because I'm sure our viewers will bring up some points that we'd like you to answer. We're going to speak to Bethany from Edinburgh first. What's your thoughts on these protesters? Is it a duty? Oh, we're going to speak to Jill from Cornwall then. Do these young protesters have a duty to protest against the climate crisis?
Well, I can understand them wanting to protest. What I'm irritated with is the fact that they always target as we call it, the little man in the street. It's always the person in the street that suffers as a result of their protest. They never aim for the chairman of the board or the top of the heap. It's always the little man in the street.
That's a very, very common criticism of protesters, especially at the moment. So I'm going to put that to Miranda. This comes up again and again with lots of different protests at the moment, that actually perhaps you're targeting the wrong people. Would you accept that, or is there a reason that you go for people just trying to get to work?
I think there's lots of different forms of protest that have been going on. There was a man who was sitting outside Parliament for over 30 days on hunger strike to get our government just literally to have a climate briefing. We've delivered letters. We have targeted the big companies. We've targeted people who work there, government ministers. We've tried it all, but let's be realistic. If we weren't causing this disruption, I wouldn't be on here right now having this conversation. There wouldn't be people, in the media talking about this if big scale action is not taken. And we do need to target the infrastructure, because that is the infrastructure that is choking our planet. And if we don't target it, it's just going to continue. We have to show how serious this is, and people are willing to do that. And I think just targeting individuals, we're in an emergency, we're in a crisis, and no one wants to be causing disruption to people. And I do apologize that is happening, but look at what the CEOs, look at what these companies are causing to other people. They are the real criminals, and that's why we have to raise awareness for this and target the infrastructure and the money that they're making. Jill, and the death of the future.
Jill, thank you very much for your call. We're going to speak we've got Bethany back now, which is lovely. So Bethany from Edinburgh, what's your views on this?
I definitely think that young people have the right to protest. I don't think that, anybody that's older don't have the time to think about climate change. And we're sitting in schools, I'm sitting at uni, and I think about, what's happening to our climate, and nobody else above in the higher power are really taking it into consideration. We're going to have to live through this for the rest of our lives and have to go through.
What about the criticism, though, that actually they are targeting people trying to get to work, people trying to get to hospitals, you know, the everyday working man?
I mean, I do think that the way how a lot of the protests are going about are quite disruptive. I mean, the ones that I definitely were like boycotting classes and boycotting schools and just showing that, you know, we do care about it. I don't think that we should be, you know, slashing tyres or anything like that, or, you know, defacing public property. I mean, like, as much as, you know, the guy on telly was like saying that we don't pay taxes. Yes, I don't pay taxes, but I still work and I still contribute to the society. And I feel that we should be, you know, protesting this and letting people be aware that, you know, we want to go into a society that has a better climate in the whole world. I mean, it's our world. We want to last it as long as possible. And, you know, everybody's focusing about moving to Mars, I think it is, Elon Musk. And, you know, we need to make sure that our whole Earth as a whole is protected. Why do we need to be moving to another planet?
Thank you very much.
Why can't we protect the one that we're in?
I understand your point there fully. Thank you very much. We're going to speak to Rita now from London. Do you think the protesters have a duty? Oh, we're going to speak to Rachel from Greater Manchester. We might come back to you, Rita, in a minute. We've just lost you. Rachel from Greater Manchester, do you think that we have a responsibility, the protesters have a duty?
Well...
Oh, I think you've got your TV on there, Rachel.
There,
that's the problem.
Yes, hi there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. So what's your thoughts?
Perfect. So I believe, you know, well, Australia is on fire, the Maldives is underwater, and I've listened to Sylvia from Derbyshire, John from Birmingham, and Mike on the panel who has too much money and wants to send people to Rwanda. And, you know, and now he's trying to ban Cocoa Pops. I say, let it all burn. I'm a young 26-year-old and I've got to a point and I'm fed up, Storm. I'm so fed up.
That's really sad to hear at 26, because honestly, it doesn't get any better. Mike, what would you say to Rachel?
Well, first of all, Rachel, Australia's not on fire. You know, Australia suffers from bushfires. It has for decades, if not centuries. And the last outbreak of bushfires were largely down to arsonists, OK? And that's a proven fact. The Maldives is not underwater. I said on this very show a couple of weeks ago, when I went to the Seychelles 20 years ago, I was told that I'd be one of the last visitors because within 10 years they'd be underwater. They're not. They're still there.
Mike,
it's an over-exaggeration to say the planet's falling apart.
I'm going to stop you there only because I've seen Miranda's reaction and I'd like her to come back in those comments. Miranda, what's your thoughts on what Mike just said?
I just don't understand how you think you know better than the people who live in those countries. If you went to speak to someone who lives in the Maldives or the indigenous people in South America who are protecting and seeing that the earth is very much falling apart because of the way that we're living, do you somehow think you know better than them, or somehow think you know better than the lead scientists of the world? I don't understand how you can say it's not happening when it very much is happening, and there's so much evidence. 99% of scientists agree on it, and we're still having this debate.
Well, I've studied the facts, and I can tell you, I know all about Australia. I know people there who've lived there for years. I've been there many times. That was the situation.
Right. He's clearly reading different statistics to Miranda there, Rachel. I'm just wondering, would you go out protesting with these protesters? Rachel?
Say that again, sorry.
Would you go out protesting with these protesters that are at the petrol stations this morning?
100%. I think Twitter's the new anarchy now, and as young people, we do end up just putting a tweet and think that's it. And I think we do need to get on the streets, but I think it's the older generation just as much. It's their families who are going to get affected. It's future generations. And you know what? Yeah, we can do so much better than this.
Thank you very much, Rachel. We've got time for just one quick call. Karen from Cornwall, what's your views?
Well, they've got a right to protest, but I don't think they've got a duty.
OK, but you're quite happy that they're protesting in the way that they are?
No, that's criminal damage. That's completely different to protesting.
Absolutely.
What would you say to that, Miranda? Because it's also, Mike brought that up earlier, it's criminal damage.
I would say I think all these people completely accept what they've done. They understand that they're going to be charged with criminal damage. That's why they've stayed there and they'll be arrested. But is it not criminal damage to literally be opening 42 new oil fields in this country when we've been told what that's going to mean for the climate? It's ironic how everyone seems to call us criminals and talk about criminal damage and then turn a blind eye to the damage that is happening to our planet because of our burning of oil. That is the real criminal damage. Smashing one thing at one petrol station in one county, in one country, it's so minimal, and I understand.
And where does it end? Where does it end? It's not illegal to open an oil field. I'm delighted to read this morning the Cambo oil field will probably get the go-ahead.
I don't think we're going to be agreeing now at the end of this show. Mike's still talking. He's going to keep talking throughout the end of the show. A huge thank you to Karen. Thanks for all your calls on this. Also a huge thank you to Miranda for joining us, and our panel, Benjamin and Mike. Also to our guests earlier on in the show, Aisha Hazarika and Jeff Norcott. We're going to be back tomorrow at 9:15.